Hi everyone, Vicky here, and welcome to Foods That Heal interview series where we explore the power of food and show you how to eat in order to live a healthier and longer life. And today we are talking about the brain function and how to feed a brain. So to do that, I have the pleasure to have a severe traumatic brain injury survivor, Cavin Balaster. Hi, Cavin. Welcome.
Hello, Vic. It is a pleasure to be here.
Thank
It's
you.
great. How to Feed a Brain. That's the name of my book.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Perfect. I know a little bit about that subject.
Yes, a little bit, yes. And Kevin, normally I would just read your bio and then go on with the interview, but I don't want to do it today. I don't want to do it because I think that you have an amazing story and I don't want to mess it up, to be quite frank. So if you don't mind, I would love for you to share your story on how you're doing what you're doing today and what happened. It all started in 2011. So I will just let you share your story.
Right, my origin story, my superhero origin story, and I do mean superhero, and I'll talk about why later. But yeah, so 2011, I sustained a severe traumatic brain injury. I was instantly unconscious, rushed to the hospital, put on life support. And while I was in a coma, I was diagnosed with a diffuse axonal injury, which is a type of brain injury that statistically 90% of patients never wake up from. And of the 10% that do, most remain in a persistent vegetative state. So I am very fortunate to have woken from this coma. Uh, I didn't eat, walk, or talk for months. My left hand was totally flexed inward like that. I was breathing through a tube in my neck and receiving nutrition through a tube in my belly. And there is so much that went into my recovery. But it was about it was about a year after my injury. I was introduced to a nutritional protocol, and I began to regain some clarity. I had been in a fog for the past year. I was in such a dense brain fog. I didn't know I was in a brain fog because I was in a brain fog, right?
Right.
So as when I changed my diet and I started to regain clarity, I was like, whoa, there's something to nutrition. So first of all, what happened? The last year had been a blur to me. And before then, like my memories were as if somebody went through the file cabinets in my mind and just threw all the files around. Like they were still there, but they were not organized, and like I really had to work to reconstruct my memories. So I'm figuring out what happened, and then also why did nutrition make such a big difference, and what else could I do to optimize my recovery. So I began reaching out to doctors and practitioners and reading everything I could get my hands on. I was listening to podcasts, reading blogs, articles, watching videos, and and I was taking online courses from top universities like University of Chicago and Duke, and I was learning about physiology and neurology and nutrition and digestion and metabolism and neurometabolism, or how the brain derives energy. And I tried many different dietary. My dietary approach has evolved over the years, and throughout that time, I couldn't find a resource that really helped to teach you how to supply the cells of your brain with the nutrients they needed for optimal function and repair. In fact, I reached out to a mentor, Dr. Alex Vasquez, who has like 3 doctorates. He's on the board of the Institute of Functional Medicine, written over 100 articles in peer-reviewed journals and like 20 textbooks. And he's one of the most brilliant people I know. And I reached out to him and I was like, I'm looking for a resource that'll teach me what nutrients are needed for the cells of the brain to function optimally.
Right.
So the cells would be the neurons and the glia. And I'm like, can you point me towards a resource? And he was like, no, I wouldn't point you to any specific resource. And I'm like, well, you need to write that. And he said, no, you know what, you do. And so that's what my book is. It's called How to Feed a Brain, Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. Here it is.
So it's your first book, so
congratulations. That's my first book. Thank you so much.
And you wrote that to help other people regain their brain function through nutrition, right?
Yeah, essentially, I wanted to create the resources. I mean, everything I do is to create the resources that I wish I had. So I created a podcast called the Adventures in Brain Injury Podcast, where I get to interview the smartest and most inspirational people I've ever met, who provide tools and education and about what we can do to self-empower ourselves and claim our brain health.
Yes.
And it's not just for brain injury. This is for any, as I say on the podcast, this is a podcast for anybody with a brain who wants to learn how to optimize their brain function and to upgrade their lives.
That's awesome. And you're saying that nutrition played a huge role in your recovery. So why is that?
Absolutely. I think of it like this. So as I said, I started regaining clarity after I changed my diet. Okay. And what the nutritional protocol that I was steered towards was a leaky gut protocol. So essentially with leaky gut, you digest food partially in the stomach, and that's passed on to your small intestines, where it's broken down further. And as it goes through your intestines, it's broken down into individual nutrients. So imagine it like this. Like, here's your gut lining, all right? You have food down here that's being digested. It's being broken down. And up here is the portal vein. So the portal vein is what takes the nutrients and transports them throughout the bloodstream. Right. So what should happen is the food down here is broken down into individual nutrients like amino acids and fatty acids and glucose and minerals and vitamins. And then those little nutrients are able to cross through this gut lining into the blood. And the blood goes, oh, I know what that is. That's a protein. That's an amino acid. I'm going to take that over here. That's glucose. We can use that for metabolism. Oh, that's fatty acid. That has many, many functions. Let's take it over here, right? And so it starts using it. With leaky gut or intestinal permeability, now this tight junction becomes looser. And now undigested food particles can fit through undigested and enter the bloodstream. So what happens when something foreign enters the bloodstream is you have an immune response like you would if you had a splinter. And it gets inflamed and an immune response occurs, which sends inflammatory cytokines, which are actually small enough to cross the blood-brain barrier and can inflame the brain. And when the brain is inflamed, communication with the digestive system is reduced, which is why brain injury is, I mean, there's almost always leaky gut associated with brain injury because the brain isn't communicating effectively with the digestive system, and so it becomes permeable. So yeah, inflammation causes intestinal permeability, which causes inflammation, which causes intestinal permeability. So it's this vicious cycle. And so this book is not a leaky gut book. There's a lot out there for that. After healing my digestion, I was like, okay, now I'm getting the nutrients to my brain.
Right.
So what are the nutrients that are going to provide the best nutrition for the cells of my brain?
Mm-hmm.
And that more studying, and this is what I came up with. And it's not a supplement regimen, you know, because we didn't evolve eating isolated nutrients in pill form. We evolved eating food. And that's how we should be getting our nutrients, is from the food we eat.
And everything that you learn is applicable to anybody. It's not only people who suffered from a brain injury. It can be applied to anybody who wants to increase their brain function, correct?
Yeah. It's giving your cells what they need to function optimally. That's exactly right. It'll make sure the cells of your brain have what they need to function.
Right. And we hear a lot about ketogenic diet, that it's the best diet to feed your brain because it's a fat diet and it nourishes your cells. Is it really the best diet, or what is the best diet?
Well, here's the thing about ketogenic diets. I'm a huge fan of ketogenic diets. Ketogenic metabolism really is neuroprotective, and it's more energy from less calories, so it's more efficient. There's less free radicals created from it. So it is more efficient with less exhaust, you know, if you want to put it that way. However, if your body is not used to using ketones, and it's like, all right, we're going to switch to ketones now, your body's going to be like, what is this stuff? It doesn't know what to do with it until you become keto adapted. And so, no, I don't think it's for everybody. And I also don't think it's for everybody all the time. Okay. I think that that I'm a huge proponent of metabolic flexibility. So you're able to digest fats, no problem, and derive energy from that form of fuel. And what's also great about ketogenic metabolism is you can eat once or twice a day and you're fine, you know? Where while I was in the hospital, I said I couldn't eat through my mouth. So I was eating through a tube in my belly. And the formula they feed patients who are unable to eat conventionally it contains ingredients like corn syrup, soy protein isolate, corn maltodextrin, calcium caseinate, canola oil.
Wow.
That's just the base of the formula.
I had no idea.
So that's what they're feeding people in the hospital. And this is what we're feeding people we're trying to get well. It's ludicrous. No. And it's like and because I was eating that, they had to feed me 5 times a day. 5 times a day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus 2 other meals of fortified corn syrup. It's crazy. It's crazy. And so switching to a ketogenic metabolism is much more efficient. You can get away with eating twice a day or less.
Mm.
you know. But I don't think it's for everybody. I don't think it's for everybody all the time. I think there were times when we didn't have vegetation, like during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, we would stock up on fats, and we would be in a ketogenic metabolism. But then in the summer, especially in like tropical climates, we were eating fruits for sure.
Right.
You know.
So how do you make your body adapt to a ketogenic diet?
So I tiptoed in, just bit by bit,
Okay.
less carbs, more fat,
Okay.
right? Just keep on switching that up. And also always sticking with good, healthy carbs and good, healthy fats. So the good, healthy carbs mostly be from vegetables and fruit, right? Um, and non-starchy is preferable, but
Okay.
I know from experience that when I was transitioning, I needed some real food. So that would be the vegetables. And
Hmm.
I roasted vegetables and had them on hand at all times, which I could add to a salad or do whatever else I needed to do with them. And I'd never limited how much I ate,
Hmm.
but I definitely limited what I would eat. So I would eat real food that was not inflammatory,
Whole foods, non-processed food.
non-processed food, the perimeter of the grocery store,
Right.
except the bakery.
Yes. And how long did it take you for your body to eliminate all the corn syrup and just run on the, is it a question of weeks, of months, of years?
I have no idea.
You don't know.
There might still be some corn syrup in there. I don't know.
Oh
They
yeah.
told me pull that stuff.
Okay, so let me put it that way. How long did it take you to start feeling better on?
Hmm. That's a tricky question to answer. I would say about 2 years
Mm,
after my injury is when I really, I mean, there were still a lot of problems going
right.
on, you know, and I'm still not fully recovered. I'm very happy with my recovery,
Mm.
but I don't know if people often ask me like, how long did it take you to get to 100%? I'm like, I'm not 100%. I'm like F9Q73%. Like I'm on a whole different scale.
But
Um,
who is really? Like, I
right.
don't think anybody can say they're 100%, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Absolutely. I mean, we're all recovering from something. I mean, most of us have brain injuries and don't even know it.
Mm,
A concussion is a brain injury.
right.
I learned that you can sustain a brain injury from something as seemingly mundane as a roller coaster.
Really?
Yeah. Your brain is like the
Makes sense though.
consistency of tofu, and it's floating around in this skull. And if you're like jostling it around a lot, it's gonna get a little damage there, right?
Mm,
And then of course there's chemical concussions and things of that sort. So that's where we'll eat or we'll be exposed to toxins of sorts that can cause damage to our brain.
mm.
And after a brain injury, especially, um, our blood-brain barrier is out of commission. It's we're toxins in our body can easily cross into our brain.
Yeah.
So that's where I really needed to learn how to eliminate all the toxins that I was being exposed to as well, and at the same time supplying the brain with the nutrients it needed.
Right, because it's a you have to take a holistic approach, if I may, because it's not just one thing. It's an array of things, and it's addition. Like if you add that up, That's when you see the improvement, right?
As we often say, as my co-host and I often say on the podcast, it's all connected.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. And your brain's like the puppet master. It's controlling everything in your body.
Right.
Everything. I mean, you have 12 cranial nerves, and they're like superhighways. They're at the base of your brainstem. These 12 cranial nerves are superhighways that bring information to your brain and send information out of your brain. And what's really crazy, what's often not known that I want to bring up is that vision. Vision is so imperative to brain function and recovery. So you have these 12 cranial nerves, 4 of them. So 1/3 of those cranial nerves are dedicated to your vision.
Wow.
Dedicated to like, so 1/3 of the superhighways go to like, I don't know, 0.1% of the real estate of your body. That's impressive.
Wow. Yes, it is impressive.
So vision is also important.
So someone who is blind and have a brain injury, what happened?
Neuroplasticity is amazing.
Yes.
And I think when there's a mechanism of a therapeutic tool used called sensory substitution.
Okay.
So basically we can substitute vision with other senses.
Oh,
Dr. Norman Doidge did this amazing experiment, or he wrote about it at least, where they had somebody who's blind and they gave him a tongue sensor.
Okay.
So, and this sensor and then he wore a camera around his head, and that camera would basically generate a outline of his surroundings and draw that on his tongue. And he was able to, and he's like, no, I literally see it.
Wow.
Which is amazing. I mean, we all hear that that blind people can hear much better.
Much better, yes.
That's another form of sensory substitution. Other senses take up that real estate and begin to use it to gauge where you are in space and time.
Wow, that's amazing. Things that we can do.
Totally agree. The brain is so cool.
Yes, it is. So let's come back to food for a second. And so if you had to suggest someone to add one food to their diet in order to maximize their brain function, what would you say would be the one food?
One food? Only one food?
It can be a group of food.
Only one food. All right, dark leafy greens.
Okay.
I think people do not get enough dark leafy greens, and if we ate far more dark leafy greens, our brains would definitely be better off because of it, without a doubt.
So the green, the dark leafy green feeds your brain.
It's one of the things. See, one is not enough.
No. But let's start somewhere. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody asked me if I was stuck on a deserted island with only 3 foods, what would those be? And I was like, ooh. I'm like all thinking feed a brain style, like what would actually supply the brain with what it needs. And I came up with dark leafy green. Well, the dark leafy greens I picked were mustard greens, which are very spicy. They're delicious, but very spicy. And then avocados, and then wild salmon.
Oh.
And those were the 3 that if I was stuck, It's still not everything, but it's pretty
It's a good
close.
start. It's a good start. And what would you say is the worst thing for the brain function, the worst food?
So the book only eliminates 2 foods.
Okay.
And those 2 foods are wheat and milk. And that's hard for everybody because wheat and milk both have opiate-like addictive properties to them. In fact, they stimulate opiate receptors in the brain. For wheat, they're called glutamorphins, and morphine, right? And for milk, it's casomorphins.
Okay.
So they both stimulate opiate receptors, which is why they're so addictive and why nobody can imagine giving them up until they do. And then they're like, whoa, I feel a lot better. But you got to give them up for at least 60 days. That's what I recommend.
At least 60 days. And dairy I can understand, but why wheat and brain? What's the...
So transglutaminase is one aspect, and that's able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And so wheat is actually Alessio Fasano, an Italian researcher who was doing celiac research.
Okay.
He says in his in one of his papers, he says no human can effectively digest wheat without an inflammatory response. And again, inflammation causes inflammatory cytokines, which are small enough to cross even a healthy blood-brain barrier.
Makes sense. Well, I learned a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you have one last piece of advice for our audience?
One last piece of advice. Let me think. Well, I have a supplement guide on my website. Go to feedabrain.com and scroll down to where the supplement guide is. And there are 5 supplements that I recommend that anybody take to optimize their brain function. These are all very close to food and very much very, very well tolerated, and they don't tax your liver. So what we're talking about is desiccated organ meats, which supplies a lot of nutrients that we don't get anymore. But you think about it, humans used to eat an entire animal, head to toe, everything, right? And we don't do that anymore.
No.
But the nutrients in organ meat, they're so nutrient dense. So organ meat supplements, fish oils as well. DHA is a super nutrient for the brain. And then sea vegetables for iodine, because most humans don't eat sea vegetables anymore.
No.
And they're extremely beneficial. I mean, we have fortified our salt with iodine because we're not getting iodine for the most part. So there's that, and CoQ10, which is also extremely well tolerated and is a cofactor for all metabolism. So it's good to have around. And yes. I don't remember what the last one is. Oh, probiotics.
Probiotics.
Yes. But solid probiotics with good survivability into the digestive system.
That's awesome. Thank you for the advice. And before I let you go, Cavin, you want to offer a gift to the audience about oil. So what?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we're talking about ketogenic metabolism, and as I said, the right kind of fat is so important. So I've put together a handout a guide on my site, where you can learn what fats are beneficial, which ones you want to avoid, and what temperature the you should be cooking.
Oh, yes.
That they shouldn't go above. Because, like, for example, coconut oil, if you heat it above its smoke temperature, it's no longer healthy. You oxidize the oil, and you don't want that anymore.
Right.
So you want to keep them below their smoke temperature. And this guide will tell you how to do that.
Nice.
You can get that at feedabrain.com /fat guide, no spaces.
Well, the link is in the email anyway that they receive with the video. So yes, just go back to that email, everybody at home, and click on the link, and you'll have access to that free oil guide. So thank you so much, Cavin. It was a pleasure to have you today, and my brain is going right now with all the information. So
yeah.
So thank you, and thank you everybody at home who is watching Foods That Heal. I hope you learn as much as I did today. So I wish you a wonderful day. Stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.